in comes another dusty, dirty, grimy gaming PC. Now, to be honest, this isn't nearly as bad as what we saw in episode 1 of the second season here, but it is still really nasty and needs to be deep cleaned. We also seriously need to address the elephant in the room here. I'd say it's an even bigger issue than the dust, to be honest. This cable management. I'm sorry, Dylan, but this is pretty darn awful. So we're gonna fix all this up for you after thoroughly cleaning each of these components, and we'll get it looking nice and snappy. Now I'm actually gonna try something in the series that I have not done before, and that is give you a POV walkthrough of the system before we clean it, talk about the specs. Many of you have been asking about specifications of these builds, and yeah, what better time to do that than right at the beginning. So this first off is a Rosewool case. It is fairly old, but airflow was a priority. Here you can see pretty much entirely meshed out front panel, which is nice. Probably one of the reasons why there's so much dust in here. Usually there's a trade-off between dust and airflow. Ignore the rat's nest for now. We have a GTX 1070 ROG Strix card, which is pretty cool. Actually, the second one we cleaned in this series. We have a Core i7 4790 or 4790K, I'm not sure which. We'll find out when we tear it all apart. And then a pretty thick and beefy 120mm AIO. As for the motherboard, LGA 1150. This is an ROG board from Asus, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of matching the Strix theme here. And then for storage, I think we just have it's just a 2.5 inch hard disk drive, not too sure. There might be another storage drive hidden back there somewhere. And then RAM, it's PNY RAM. I can't really tell what it is unless I pull out the DIMMs. We'll do that later on. Probably 8 or 16 gigs. So a fairly balanced system considering the GTX 1070 is definitely going to hold its own. It's going to run fairly quiet, especially quiet once we repaste it and clean it. And the CPU, I mean, assuming this is a non-K or at least not, heavily overclocked, should be running just fine with that 120mm AIO. I'm tempted to replace it because I'm not sure how old this is. It's a Zalman AIO, which those are, pretty rare today. But yeah, worst case, I mean, we clean it all up, fix the cable management, maybe replace the AIO or the power supply, but at the end of the day, still a really solid system, even if we don't upgrade anything. So can't wait to tear this one apart. Stay tuned. To get rid of that annoying activation watermark, hop on over to VIP SCD Key and purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for fractions of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, receive your key in seconds, and activate your OS here. Bye bye watermark. And be sure to use our new offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. Now for cleaning gear, it's pretty much unchanged. I still have the electric blower, I still have the Q-tips, the knockoff iFixit toolkit of sorts for prying things apart. Also have the UV light, which isn't really required for cleaning, but it's nice to see what this stuff looks like in the black light. Have some isopropyl alcohol, 90% or above is usually good. And then one other thing, baby wipes. So if you have not already seen our how to deep clean a case video, which we just released a few days ago, should be at least, unless something really weird popped up in the workflow. I also mentioned using baby wipes, essentially. I don't know. I have a kid, and so we have plenty of these. And these actually come in really handy. So not only are they not going to damage really anything, unless you're just being really stupid with how much pressure you're applying, but they can really help kind of clean up the scuffs and things on the externals of the case, and even things like the power supply. You don't want to get water, obviously, in the power supply, so be careful with how you use this stuff. I don't recommend using it everywhere. But in moderation, if you know what you're doing, the baby wipes actually come in really handy. Good for scrubbing, getting things up. If you don't want to use baby wipes though, you can still use something like a paper towel or more specifically a shop towel to prevent that fraying when you're going at things with IPA. And one more thing, a lot of you in the comments like to point out that I wear this hat in a weird way. First off, I wear a hat in general because when dust is floating everywhere in this room and I step out for a few minutes to either grab some snacks or maybe I gotta pick up my kid for a few minutes or whatever, I don't like to have all that dust settle in my hair. So it's just as easy as taking the hat off, right? And then, yeah, my head's free of dust, at least it should be. I could also wear it like this, but this just feels a bit silly. I mean, I know this is how you're supposed to wear a ball cap, but when I'm on camera, it just feels a bit weird. So yeah, and if you're wondering, it takes me about 2 to 3 days to clean most of these systems. I would say about maybe 5 or 6 hours worth of labor per day to fully disassemble, fully clean, and fully reassemble, and also troubleshoot. Make sure that the system posts and doesn't have any issues there. I don't want to give the system back to the owner and it not work. That wouldn't make me look good, even though I'm doing this for free. But in that labor timeline of maybe 2 to 3 days, you got to remember that I'm also filming quite a bit. I film most of this process. There's some stuff you don't see on camera, but most of it I'm filming, and I don't have a camera that just floats around freely and takes shots on its own. I could do a POV thing, but that's going to give give people headaches. I have to move the camera constantly to get these time-lapse shots, to get these up-close macro shots, the slow-mo shots, the outdoor shots. That takes quite a bit of time as well. So I'd say if you were doing this yourself, and many of you probably know this if you have done this process or at least been somewhat as thorough as we are, it should take probably a full day, maybe a day and a half. Maybe the second day you just spend reassembling everything and troubleshooting. But yeah, it's pretty intensive, and I know you kind of see it all crunched into a 20 or 30-minute video, but there's quite a bit that goes on here. I still enjoy it. I enjoy how much you guys enjoy it, and that's why these videos keep on coming. So thanks for the support. Let's get started with this one. All right, so all the components are out on the table waiting for the cleaning, but I noticed a few, you'd call them issues with this case. It was kind of MacGyver to fit, to accommodate the hardware that the user wanted in here. So first off, you can see how this looks like it was Dremel just sliced straight through, just bare steel cut through there, because there was a clearance issue, it looks like, with the AIO here at the rear. So this was cut through so that the IO would fit. Actually, it's not a height clearance issue, it's a left to right issue, so there's a small little lip, and he wanted to cut through that lip because that lip was preventing him from installing it back here. So that's the first thing I noticed, and then the second thing here is that, like, this, I guess this is where floppy drives would go, but he's, I don't know if he's like hammered this or something. He hammered both sides of this cage. He couldn't remove it because it is riveted, so unless you had a drill or something, even if you had a drill, it's gonna be really difficult to get some of these rivets from the top. But he just hammered these things back to fit his larger Strix 1070, which is, I mean, clever if you need a quick and dirty solution, but it doesn't look very pretty. And the fact that I know that this is what happened, like now that I see it with everything removed, yeah, it doesn't look too pretty. So what I'm gonna do is replace his case. Now this owner obviously prioritized airflow when choosing this case over others that were available at the time. That is apparent to me. I think it was deliberate. I'm gonna try to honor that with the case upgrade that I'm gonna give him. So this here is the XPG Defender Pro. If you remember, we actually built with this case in a sponsored AData PC build video, but that front panel there is pretty much fully meshed out. Actually, it's probably better than a mesh design, to be frank. Very airy up top as well. Plenty of hardware support in here. Won't need to hammer anything to get that graphics card to fit. And in my opinion, it looks a lot better, a lot more modern. But don't worry, we're still gonna throw the deep cleaning of this case in the time lapse. Here we go. are. We have deep cleaned everything as you just saw. I want to reassemble this case first because, as I said earlier, we're not going to be reusing this. We're going to switch to the XPG case. So we'll reassemble this. I'm probably just going to keep it for a while. It's a bit beat up, so it's probably not worth too much to somebody. I mean, I'll give it away for sure, but whether or not it's going to impress whoever I give it away to, it's gonna depend on the budget, I think, because it is cut, it is bent. But yeah, I want to show you what it looks like now that it all is thoroughly clean. So yeah, let's get to that, and then we'll get to reassembling everything else, putting it into the new case. And now it's time to check and make sure everything works. So we, again, disassembled everything, so we want to make sure that the fans all spin, that we don't have any like wires clipping the fans, make sure all the lights light up because this case has tons of integrated RGB LEDs, and yeah, so that's what we're gonna do now. Make sure it posts as well, obviously. Did I turn it up? No? This button not wired up right? Oh, you know, maybe it has something to do with the fact that I plugged the hard drive LED into the power switch pins. So yeah, that was a really rookie mistake. Okay, let's try this again. That is much more like it. I'm not getting lights to the fans. All right, that is awesome. Do we have our drive detected, SATA port 3? Okay, looking good. The last thing we need to fix then, I'm not too sure about these RGB fans because this motherboard doesn't have an RGB fan header. It's a bit older, it's a Haswell board, so we might need to just go without the RGB. Hey, there we go. I knew there had to be a way to do it. So now we can cycle through color modes here. Oh yeah. I think the red looks good because the motherboard has native red LEDs. So yeah, it looks good. Now I want to take a minute to talk about Whoosh because they specialize in tech hygiene, kind of like what we already do in this series with cleaning PCs. Whoosh provides products to safely and effectively clean smart device screens like smartphones and laptops. I mean, think about how dirty these things actually get. Their screen shine removes virtually all dust, dirt, oil, grime, and fingerprints with an environmentally friendly solution free of alcohol, ammonia, dyes, and fragrances. So be sure to visit whoosh.com to choose between various sizes. You can find their sponsor link down below. Well, there you go, folks. It looks much better now, in my humble opinion. I think that the transformation was rather night and day. Despite this not being the dirtiest system, I mean, it was definitely dirty with respect to how it was cable managed. And I looked at this case, the old case that we cleaned, and it was pretty difficult to get cables really anywhere. So I can't fault the builder too much there. The case was just super restrictive. There weren't cutouts up top for the 8-pin CPU power cable, etc. So yeah, this case definitely big step in the right direction there. Still great for airflow and looks pretty darn good at the same time. Now, if you're wondering what happened to the graphics card LEDs, well, there's no button that allows you to manually turn them on and off like there are in some Strix cards. But it does light up right when the PC posts. So I know that I wired the LEDs back up correctly. I think this might just be stored in memory. Maybe the owner turned off these RGBs himself and it's just defaulting to that setting right after it boots up. But everything else worked out great. The cable management at the rear is really the only thing that I'm still kind of disappointed in, and there's really nothing I could do. I mean, this power supply from XFX has so many freaking cables hanging from it, like 3 or 4 SATA power strands. There's another 2 or 3 Molex power strands. We don't need that many. So I was stuck kind of just trying to stuff them in places that weren't already being used, and it ended up not looking super pretty back there. But at the end of the day, this part, the part you see, looks really clean. And I think that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Yeah, it's nice to have that peace of mind, like knowing that things are nice and tidy back here, but there's only so much you can do with a power supply like this. So a bit disappointed there, but elsewhere, very happy with how this turned out. Now with that, if you guys liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. That helps a ton. Also consider subscribing if you have not already. Leave a comment down below and know what you think about this transformation here. If you have a PC that is in need of desperate cleaning and you want it cleaned and you live in the Orlando, Florida area, send my wife an email. It is down there in the video description, just below this window box. And yeah, send her an email, send some photos, show us how dirty the system is. The dirtier systems are prioritized. At this point, we have so many in the queue. We have to pick the dirtiest ones to clean. Those are the ones that are the most interesting, the coolest to see being transformed on video. So that's how we're doing it. If you have a really dirty system, it'll probably be on the channel, and I'll probably clean it sooner rather than later. All right, that's all for this one. My name is Greg. Thanks for cleaning with me.